你兩個都唔使留喺度，快啲去救人先。
Stand with me, face the West. Once upon a time, in China wasn't just a martial arts film, it was a battle cry wrapped in silk robes and exploding gunpowder. A movie where tradition fought technology, where one man's fist stood against an empire's rifles, and where the crew nearly died bringing it all to screen. These are 20 weird facts about Once Upon a Time in China. And the bonus, the star almost walked away on day one because of a single prop. Light the fuse. This powder keg is about to blow. Number 1. Before the cameras rolled, before Jet Li became Wong Fei-hung, the role belonged to someone else entirely. Tsui Hark's first choice wasn't a martial artist, it was Jackie Chan. Chan had already played Wong Fei-hung twice in the Drunken Master films, bringing comedy and acrobatics to the legendary folk hero. Hark wanted that star power, that box office guarantee. He called Chan personally, laid out his vision, promised a different take, darker, more political, grounded in real history. But Chan said no, not because he didn't like the script, because he was exhausted. He'd just finished back-to-back productions, survived multiple injuries, and frankly didn't want to play Wong Fei-hung again. He told Hark the character had become a cage, a set of expectations he couldn't escape. So Hark pivoted fast. He needed someone who could fight like a master, but look like a scholar. Someone who moved with precision, not chaos. Enter Jet Li, fresh off Shaolin Temple, hungry to prove himself beyond wire work and temple kicks. Li read the script in one sitting, loved the political edge, the moral complexity. He said yes immediately, and just like that, the folk hero got a new face. What Jackie Chan walked away from became Jet Li's defining role, the performance that would launch him into international stardom and reshape martial arts cinema forever. Number 2. Tsui Hark didn't just want to make a period film, he wanted to rebuild an entire era. Foshan at the edge of collapse, Western powers carving up China like a feast. But here's the problem. Hong Kong in 1990 had almost nothing left from that period. No preserved streets, no authentic architecture, no imperial Canton waiting on a backlot. So Hark did the unthinkable. He built it himself. An entire town, block by block, constructed from scratch in the new territories. Not miniatures, not facades, actual full-scale buildings with working doors, layered interiors, streets wide enough for horse-drawn carts and fight choreography. The production team spent months researching photographs, studying historical records, consulting with scholars on everything from roof tiles to doorway heights. They hired craftsmen who still knew how to build with traditional methods using wood joinery instead of nails, layering plaster the old way. The cost was astronomical. The studio panicked, but Hark refused to compromise. He knew that if the world didn't feel real, the story wouldn't matter. And when the set was finished, it was breathtaking. Actors walked onto it and felt transported. Jet Li later said it was the first time he truly understood the weight of playing Wong Fei-hung because the world around him demanded that respect. What you see on screen, those crowded markets, those narrow alleys, that sense of a civilization teetering, that wasn't movie magic. That was Tsui Hark refusing to fake history.
Home Video proudly invites you to return.
Number 3. The opening fight scene, Wong Fei-hung facing down a theater full of thugs, it's one of the most iconic moments in martial arts cinema. But it almost killed the stunt team. The sequence was designed to show off Wong's mastery of staff fighting, his ability to control a room without breaking a sweat. Jet Li trained for weeks, perfecting the flow, the rhythm, the way the staff became an extension of his body. But when they started filming, the choreography required the stunt performers to take real hits, full-speed strikes that had to look devastating without causing actual injury. The margin for error was razor thin. During one take, Li's staff connected harder than intended, catching a stuntman directly across the ribs. The crack echoed through the set. Everyone froze. The stuntman went down, gasping, unable to breathe. The medics rushed in, broken ribs, bruised lung. He was pulled from the production entirely. Li was devastated. He wanted to stop filming, but the stuntman from his hospital bed sent word back. Keep going, finish the scene. So they did. They adjusted the angles, pulled back slightly on the contact, but kept the intensity. And what you see in the final cut, that brutal, elegant dance of violence, it came at a cost. Real pain, real risk. Because in 1991, Hong Kong cinema, there was no other way.
Jet Li brings to life
Number 4. Rosamund Kwan wasn't supposed to play Aunt Yee. The role of the westernized, progressive woman caught between two worlds was originally written for a more established dramatic actress, someone with gravitas and classical training. The studio wanted a name that could anchor the emotional core of the film while Jet Li handled the action. But during casting, something went wrong. The actress they wanted had scheduling conflicts, then creative disagreements, then finally she just walked away. Production was days from starting. They had no female lead. Tsui Hark panicked, called in every favor, auditioned dozens of women, and then Rosamund Kwan walked in. She was young, relatively unknown, and completely different from what they'd envisioned. But she understood something the others hadn't. Aunt Yee wasn't just a love interest. She was a mirror to Wong Fei-hung's struggle. Tradition versus progress, East versus West, embodied in a single person. Kwan played the audition with quiet strength, no melodrama, no manufactured chemistry, just intelligence and dignity. Hark watched in silence, then offered her the role on the spot. She had 3 days to prepare. No rehearsal with Lee, no time to build the relationship slowly. They met on set, ran through the scenes once, then filmed. And somehow, it worked. The tension between them felt real, because it was real. Two strangers trying to find a connection in the middle of controlled chaos. Kwan would go on to play Aunt Yee in 5 sequels, but that first film, she was learning as she went, and you can see it in every frame. Number 5. The ladder fight. Everyone remembers it. Wong Fei-hung, trapped in a warehouse, surrounded by enemies, grabs a bamboo ladder and turns it into a weapon, spinning, striking, defending, all while balanced on uneven ground and avoiding actual blades. It's a masterclass in prop choreography, 3 minutes of pure martial arts poetry. But here's the truth. Jet Li hated it. Not the concept, the execution. The ladder wasn't a prop designed for stunts. It was a real bamboo ladder, heavy, unwieldy, with rough edges that tore up Li's hands every time he spun it. The choreographer, Yuan Wu-ping, insisted on authenticity. He wanted the weight to show, the strain, the difficulty. So Li trained with that exact ladder for 2 weeks, building calluses, learning to control something that didn't want to be controlled. And during filming, the scene required over 40 takes. 40 times Li spun that ladder, struck those positions, held that balance. His hands were bleeding by take 20. By take 30, he could barely grip, but he never asked to stop. He just wrapped his hands tighter and kept going. Yuan Wu-ping later admitted he pushed too hard, that they could have used a lighter prop for some angles. But Li disagreed. He said the pain made it real, made the character's struggle visible, and he was right. When you watch that fight, you're not seeing movie magic. You're seeing a man at the edge of his physical limits, refusing to break.
into international superstardom.
Number 6. Tsui Hark and Jet Li fought constantly, not over script changes or artistic vision, but over one specific thing: wire work. Li had built his career on real kung fu, on the belief that martial arts should look grounded, human, achievable. He hated wires, hated the floating, gravity-defying stunts that dominated Hong Kong action cinema. Hark, on the other hand, saw wires as poetry, as a way to elevate fights beyond realism into something mythic. The clash came to a head during the final warehouse battle. Hark wanted Li on wires for a dramatic leap across burning crates. Li refused. He said he could do it for real, that the jump wasn't that far, that wires would ruin the authenticity. They argued for an hour. Crew members stood around awkwardly. Finally, they compromised. Li would do the jump without wires, but if he missed, if he got hurt, they'd reshoot it with wires, and he couldn't complain. All Li agreed. The stunt coordinator measured the distance: 12 feet across, 8 feet up, landing on a platform barely 3 feet wide. They cleared the area, checked the trajectory, gave Li one practice run to gauge it. Then they rolled cameras. Li backed up, took 3 running steps, and launched himself into the air. For a moment, he seemed to hang there, suspended not by wires, but by sheer will. Then he landed, perfectly balanced, arms out, stance solid. The crew erupted. Hark walked over, shook his hand, and never mentioned wires again. That jump, wire-free and breathtaking, became one of the film's signature moments, and it proved something Lee had been saying all along. Sometimes, reality is more powerful than fantasy. Number 7. The gunfight massacre wasn't in the original script. Tsui-hark added it 3 weeks into production. A brutal sequence where Wong Fei-hung watches helplessly as Western rifles mow down Chinese workers. It was meant to be the film's moral center, the moment that transforms Wong from a traditional master into someone forced to acknowledge that fists can't stop bullets, that the old ways are dying. But the scene terrified the studio. They said it was too political, too violent, too risky for a martial arts film trying to reach a broad audience. They pressured Hark to cut it entirely. He refused, so they compromised. He could keep the scene if he toned down the blood, pulled back on the graphic deaths, made it more implied than explicit. Hark agreed, then ignored them completely. He shot the scene exactly as he'd envisioned. Full carnage, bodies falling, Wong Fei-hung's face frozen in horror. When the studio executives saw the dailies, they threatened to shut down production. Hark told them to try it. He'd already filmed most of the movie. They couldn't replace him now. It was a gamble, a power play that could have destroyed his career. But he believed in the scene, believed the film needed that gut punch of reality. So, he held his ground. And when the film was released, that massacre became the most talked about moment, the scene that elevated Once Upon a Time in China, from action spectacle to serious political commentary. Critics praised it, audiences were shaken by it, and Tsui-hark proved that sometimes you have to fight for your vision, even when everyone tells you to back down.
Time of revolution.
Number 8. Jet Li almost quit on the first day of filming. Not because of the stunts, not because of creative differences, because of the costume. Wong Fei-hung's iconic silk robe, the flowing garment that became synonymous with the character, was custom made by one of Hong Kong's most respected costume designers. She'd spent weeks on it, researching period-accurate patterns, hand-stitching every seam, aging the fabric to look lived in. It was a work of art. It was also incredibly uncomfortable. The collar was too tight, restricting Lee's breathing during fight scenes. The sleeves were too long, catching on props and throwing off his timing. And the fabric, while beautiful, was heavy and hot under the studio lights. Lee tried it on, moved through some basic forms, and immediately knew it wouldn't work. He told the costume designer as diplomatically as possible. She was offended. She'd poured her soul into that robe. Tsui-hark was caught in the middle. They couldn't start filming without the costume, but they couldn't film with Lee unable to move properly. So they made an emergency adjustment. The costume team worked through the night, taking in the collar, shortening the sleeves, replacing the heavy silk with a lighter blend that photographed identically, but weighed half as much. By morning, they had a new robe. Lee tried it on, moved through his forms again, and nodded. It worked. Crisis averted. But for 12 hours, the entire production hung in the balance over a piece of clothing. And Lee learned something important. Sometimes the smallest details matter most. Number 9. The film's famous theme song, A Man Should Better Himself, didn't exist until after filming wrapped. Tsui-hark had always planned for a powerful musical theme, something that captured Wong Fei-hung's spirit, his determination to stand strong in changing times. But during production, he was too focused on the action, the drama, the 1,000 daily decisions that go into making a film. Music could wait. Then they screened a rough cut for the studio, and everyone felt it. Something was missing. The film was strong, the performances solid, the action breathtaking, but it needed an emotional anchor, something to tie it all together. Hark called in composer James Wong and lyricist Wang Zhan with one instruction: write something that makes people want to stand up and fight for what they believe in. They delivered the song in 3 days. George Lam recorded it in one take, pouring everything into those soaring vocals. And when they laid it over the opening credits, over those shots of Wong Fei-hung standing firm against the chaos, it transformed the entire film. Suddenly, it wasn't just a kung fu movie, it was an anthem. The song became a phenomenon in its own right, topping charts across Asia, played at protests and rallies, adopted as an unofficial symbol of resistance and pride. People who'd never seen the film knew the song. And it all happened because Tsui-hark trusted his instincts. because he knew great art sometimes arrives at the last possible moment. Number 10. The final fight against Yim wasn't supposed to be in a burning building. Originally, the climax was scripted as a straightforward duel in an open courtyard, two masters facing each other in classical form, clean, traditional, honorable. But 2 weeks before filming that sequence, Tsui-hark watched the footage they had already shot and realized something was wrong. The film had been building toward chaos, toward the collapse of the old order. A clean duel didn't match that energy. It needed fire, destruction, the world literally burning down around them. So he rewrote the entire sequence over a weekend. The new version, Wong and Yim fighting in a warehouse set ablaze by foreign invaders, flames everywhere, structures collapsing, tradition and progress consuming each other. The production team had 4 days to build the set and rig it for controlled burns. The stunt coordinator called it insane. The insurance company nearly pulled coverage, but Hark pushed forward. On the day of filming, they had one chance to get it right. Real fire, real heat, Jet Li and Yen Shi-kwan fighting full speed in the middle of it all. The temperature on set hit 120 degrees. Both actors were dripping sweat before the first punch. They fought for 6 minutes straight, no cuts, cameras rolling as flames crept closer and closer. By the end, stagehands were rushing in with extinguishers, pulling the actors out as ceiling beams started to crack. It was dangerous, reckless, and absolutely breathtaking. And it gave the film the ending it deserved. Not a peaceful resolution, but two men battling in hell itself, neither one backing down. Number 11. The restaurant brawl, where Wong defends his medicine clinic from a gang shakedown, required 73 takes. Not because anyone messed up, but because Yuan Wu-ping kept changing the choreography mid-shoot. He'd watch a take, see something that bothered him, some timing issue or spatial problem invisible to everyone else, and he'd stop everything. The actors would reset while Yuan walked through new movements, adjusting angles, reworking combinations. Jet Li later said it was maddening, but brilliant. Each version got tighter, faster, more cinematic. The stunt team was exhausted, bruised from repeated falls and strikes, but nobody complained because they could see it getting better. Take after take, the fight evolved from good to great to legendary. When they finally printed take 73, the crew applauded, not sarcastically, but with genuine respect. They'd just witnessed obsessive perfectionism create something unforgettable. That scene, those 3 minutes of controlled chaos, took 16 hours to film and stands as one of the finest fight sequences in martial arts cinema. Number 12. Rosamund Kwan couldn't ride a bicycle. Sounds simple, but in 1875, China, bicycles were symbols of Western influence, and Aunt Yee needed to ride one to establish her progressive character. The problem? Kwan had never learned. She'd grown up in Hong Kong where bicycles weren't common transportation for her social class. When the script called for a scene of her cycling through Foshan streets while Wong Fei-hung watched disapprovingly, panic set in. The production gave her 3 days to learn before filming. She practiced relentlessly, falling constantly, scraping knees and elbows. Her stunt double offered to do the scene, but Kwan refused. She understood that small moments define characters as much as dramatic speeches. By shooting day, she could barely manage a wobbly straight line. They filmed it anyway, using that unsteadiness to show Aunt Yee's determination, her willingness to struggle with new things while maintaining dignity. What looks like character choice on screen was actually an actress refusing to give up. Number 13. The film's historical consultant quit halfway through production. Professor Chen had been hired to ensure accuracy in customs, language, and political details. For weeks, he worked closely with Tsui-hark, providing notes on everything from hand gestures to power dynamics. Then came the script changes. Hark started compressing timelines, combining historical figures, inventing confrontations that never happened. Professor Chen protested. This wasn't history, it was fantasy. Hark's response was simple. He wasn't making a documentary, he was making a legend. The distinction mattered to Chen. He believed Wong Fei-hung deserved factual representation, not myth-making. So whilst he walked away, quietly, professionally. Hark replaced him with a different consultant, one who understood that cinema serves truth differently than textbooks. The irony is that both men were right. The film plays fast with facts, but captures something deeper: the spirit of an era, the feeling of standing at history's crossroads. Professor Chen's objections came from love of accuracy. Hark's deviations came from love of storytelling. Number 14. During the lion dance sequence, a performer broke his ankle mid-routine. The traditional dance requires two people inside an elaborate lion costume, performing acrobatic leaps while maintaining perfect synchronization. It's dangerous work, requiring strength, balance, and absolute trust in your partner. The production hired professional lion dancers, masters of the art who'd performed at festivals across Asia. Everything was going smoothly until a platform collapse sent the rear dancer crashing down from 8 feet. His ankle snapped audibly. Filming stopped immediately. The medics rushed in while the front dancer, still in costume, pulled off the lion head, revealing tears streaming down his face. These weren't just stunt performers to each other. They were brothers who'd trained together since childhood. The injured dancer was hospitalized. His brother wanted to quit the production entirely. But the injured man sent a message: find another partner, finish the dance, honor the tradition. So they did, bringing in a replacement who learned the choreography in 48 hours. When you watch that lion dance sequence, you're seeing dedication that goes beyond filmmaking into something sacred. Number 15. Jet Li refused to use a stunt double for the umbrella fight. Wong Fei-hung battles an assassin in pouring rain, using only an umbrella to defend against sword strikes. The choreography required split-second timing, the umbrella deflecting blades just millimeters from Li's face and body. The stunt coordinator insisted on using a double for the most dangerous moments. Li said no, not from ego, but from understanding character. Wong Fei-hung's power comes from calmness under pressure, from facing death without flinching. A stunt double, even for a few shots, would break that spell. So, Li took every strike, every near miss, trusting his training and his opponent's control. The swordsman, a veteran stunt performer, carried the weight of that trust. One mistake, one miscalculation, and he'd scar or blind the film's star. They rehearsed the sequence 50 times before filming, building muscle memory, eliminating variables. When cameras rolled, it was flawless, brutal, and breathtaking. Li's refusal to use a double transformed a good fight scene into something mythic. Number 16. The film's international release almost never happened. After its Hong Kong success, distributors in other markets couldn't figure out how to sell it. Too violent for family audiences, too foreign for action fans, too political for escapist entertainment. It sat in distribution limbo for months while Tsui Hark watched helplessly. Then something unexpected happened. Bootleg VHS copies started circulating in Asian communities worldwide. People were dubbing it, subtitling it themselves, passing it person to person. Word spread through martial arts schools, cultural centers, university clubs. This wasn't piracy as theft, it was grassroots evangelism. Fans were so hungry to share the film, they became its unofficial distributors. When legitimate distributors finally noticed the demand, they moved quickly. The theatrical release, when it came, wasn't creating an audience. It was finally serving one that already existed. This pattern would repeat with other Hong Kong films, but Once Upon a Time in China pioneered it, proving that great cinema finds its audience regardless of industry gatekeepers. Number 17. Tsui Hark shot 3 different endings. The final scene, Wong Fei-hung, standing alone as his world changes around him, was actually version 3. The first ending had Wong accepting a government position, suggesting hope through compromise. Test audiences hated it, calling it a betrayal of his principles. The second ending showed Wong opening a school, explicitly mentioning teaching the next generation. It felt too neat, too resolved. Hark knew something was wrong, but couldn't identify what. Then, during a sleepless night, it hit him. Wong Fei-hung's story doesn't have an ending, because the struggle continues. The film needed to close without resolving, to acknowledge that fighting for your beliefs is ongoing, not conclusive. So he wrote the third version, Wong standing firm while others move past him, neither victorious nor defeated, just enduring. They filmed it in one take, Jet Li understanding immediately what Hark wanted. that ambiguous, powerful final image became the template for the entire series, defining Wong's character as someone who stands rather than conquers. Number 18. The production ran out of money, with 3 days of filming remaining. Tsui Hark had gone over budget on sets, stunts, reshoots, all the obsessive details that made the film special, but broke the bank. The studio called an emergency meeting. They could loan more money, but only if Hark cut specific scenes. A training montage, a romantic subplot scene, and the photography studio confrontation. Hark refused. Those scenes were essential to character development, to pacing, to the film's emotional core. The standoff lasted hours. Finally, a compromise. Hark could keep filming if he personally guaranteed repayment of any overages. It was a massive financial risk, potentially career-ending if the film flopped, but Hark signed without hesitation because he believed in what they were making. Those final 3 days produced just some of the film's most memorable moments. And when Once Upon a Time in China became a box office phenomenon, Hark's gamble paid off spectacularly. But there were 72 hours when his entire future hung on believing in art over accounting. Number 19. Jet Li's father died during post-production. Li had maintained a complicated relationship with him, distance mixed with traditional filial duty. When he got the news, he was in the middle of ADR sessions, re-recording dialogue to fix sound issues. He asked for a break, disappeared for 2 hours, then returned red-eyed and silent. He finished the session without mentioning what happened. Days later, Tsui Hark learned the truth and offered to halt everything so Li could grieve properly. Li refused, saying work was keeping him together, that Wong Fei-hung's strength was helping him find his own. There's a scene late in the film where Wong receives news of tragedy, and his face barely moves, only his eyes betraying pain. That wasn't acting. That was Jet Li channeling real grief into his character, using Wong's stoic dignity as a framework for processing loss. Watch that moment knowing what was happening behind the scenes, and it becomes almost unbearably powerful. Sometimes life and art collide in ways that transcend technique. On number 20, the film spawned 5 sequels, but Tsui Hark only directed the first 3. After that, creative differences with the studio and exhaustion from the grueling production schedule forced him to step back. He'd given everything to these films, poured his vision of China, history, and heroism into every frame, but he was burning out, unable to maintain that intensity indefinitely. When he handed the series to other directors, he gave one instruction: never forget that Wong Fei-hung represents something bigger than Kung Fu. He's the embodiment of trying to preserve what matters while accepting necessary change. The later sequels varied in quality, some excellent, others missing that spark. But the foundation Hark built in the first film remained solid. Once Upon a Time in China wasn't just launching a franchise, it was establishing a new way to tell martial arts stories, where action served character, where fights had political meaning, where heroes could be powerful and uncertain simultaneously. That legacy extends far beyond box office numbers into how we understand and value martial arts cinema. Bonus fact: the silk banner that Wong Fei-hung holds in the iconic poster, the one that became the film's visual signature, almost didn't make it to the shoot. The prop master had commissioned a calligrapher to create the banner with Wong's principles written in traditional characters. But the night before the photography session, the calligrapher called in a panic. He'd made a mistake, used the wrong character in a crucial phrase. The error was subtle, but anyone literate in Chinese would spot it immediately. He needed to start over. Problem: the photo shoot was in 6 hours, and creating authentic-looking calligraphy takes days of drying time. The prop team improvised brilliantly, using heat lamps and fans to age the new banner overnight. By morning, it looked perfect, centuries old despite being hours fresh. That banner, rushed into existence through creative desperation, became one of martial arts cinema's most recognizable images. Jet Li holding it, standing straight, facing forward, embodying everything Wong Fei-hung represents. It appears on posters, DVD covers, and merchandise worldwide.